Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about A24's newest horror movie, Y2K. I have a lot of mixed feelings about this movie. When I first left the theater, I was like, that was entertaining, that was really cool. I've thought about it a little bit more. We're going to fully dive into this. Let's do this, shall we?
Modern movie review.
Okay, so right off the bat, I do want to go ahead and say, my initial thought process was I really like this movie. I think I still do, but I do gotta say this right off the bat. I think that this movie is not necessarily what a lot of people would want this movie to be. For one, I feel like this concept could have been done 10 times cooler. I feel like this movie kind of feels like, if you know the scary movie franchise, where it's just like the Scream movies, but like if they spoofed it, this entire movie feels like a spoofed version of like an actual movie that would be really interesting. I will say this, for the most part, I do really like the subgenre that is horror comedies, and this one fits into that perfectly. Like, this movie definitely 100%, they were like, there's going to be some horror elements in here, but for the most part, it's going to be a comedy because we're following a bunch of young people, and I think that it has an incredible energy to it. I think that overall, they knew what kind of style and like just overall aesthetic they wanted to have with this movie, and they followed it through and then, and I do really like that. I think that this movie has its own self-identity down-packed, and the director has so much flair, and they overuse the hell out of nostalgia in this movie. I will say this, if you're the kind of person who like hates when old movies just constantly like reuse super popular songs, and you don't like it when like modern day like sequels or whatever are like just showing you montages of like older things, you might not like this, because there's a lot of like, I think some people would refer to it as like nostalgia porn in this. A lot of the soundtrack is just super like the most like popular songs that came out back in the day, which I think does make sense. Like, I think if you're doing a period piece, you want to be doing these cool songs from back then, and it definitely makes sense to include music as much as possible, and especially when you're doing a period piece. It's such an easy way to kind of pinpoint where this movie is taking place, but also it's the movie Y2K. The entire premise is around the fact that like it's going to be New Year's Eve. It's going to be the year 2000. This is going to be so exciting. I feel like you didn't need to go that hard on that, but that being said, there's a lot of fun to be had here. This movie is, in a sense, a coming-of-age film, which I thought was really, really interesting. Personally, I really liked a lot of the characters in here. I think that Rachel Zegler is absolutely incredible. I've been one of the people who've said literally any movie she's ever in, I will watch it, because she has been the best part of pretty much everything she's been in. Steven Spielberg's why am I blanking on the name right now? West Side Story. She was absolutely incredible in that. I think that was her debut role, and she absolutely nailed it. The Hunger Games Ballad of the Songbirds and Snakes, she was incredible in that. Shazam! Fury of the Gods, she was arguably the best part of that movie. There wasn't a whole lot of good going on in that movie, so that doesn't mean much. But overall, I think that her performance in this was fantastic. I think they did a trope in movies, which I feel like I used to be a sucker for, but I'm kind of like, I guess, growing out of it a little bit. But just the overall trope of like, nerdy boy falls in love with like a you know, popular girl. And I think that trope is really interesting, because it's kind of like the inverse of a very popular trope that happens with young rom-coms or whatever, with like female protagonist, is like, you know, this young female ends up going out and falling in love with like the hot jock sports guy, and we end up realizing that like this guy who's a jock is actually really sweet and not actually a jerk. It's kind of the inverse of that, and I think that that's really interesting. I don't know if I've seen a lot of movies like this in the past, or this is like a relatively new thing for me, but I will say one of my favorite movies that has came out this year was a movie called Snack Shack, and they did a similar thing. So that trope was in this movie. I think that the overall romance story in this movie is incredibly underdeveloped. I feel like this is one of those movies where it's just like, there's a guy, there's a girl, the guy has an overwhelming crush on the girl. By the end of the movie, they're going to get together regardless of what happens, and because of that, there's not a whole lot of like flirting. There's not a whole lot of time for them to actually like come together. There's like a couple of moments where they're doing things together, and it's like, oh, okay, they're kind of like, you know, getting this connection. But also, almost every other like weird will they won't they relationship that happened in this movie had more tension, had more chemistry, and actually felt more like, oh my god, these people are gonna fall in love. And that's a complaint that I do have about this movie. There's about like 10 or 12 characters in this movie that are named and have some kind of role in some way, shape, or form. And a lot of them are constantly having these like one-off interactions where it's like this side character who's never interacted with this other side character, and now they're interacting, and it's like, I think they just found out they're in love. I don't know what's happening, but this movie was just like overly loving, overly just comedic. There's a lot of like really secondhand embarrassment moments. So if you're not a fan of secondhand embarrassment, there's going to be a lot of issues with that. But overall, I was laughing all throughout this entire movie. I think that if nothing else, it is absolutely hilarious. And I think that it's kind of has nostalgia and comedy completely covered up any sense of like a coherent plot here, because the whole plot point, for people who do not know what Y2K was, a lot of people thought that when the year turned to 2000, technology was going to take over, computers were going to take over, and they were just going to like wipe out humanity essentially, right? And in this movie, it's about a bunch of teenagers who are, really excited about Y2K, and they're going to party and they're going to go crazy and it's going to be fantastic. And then, clock strikes midnight. Oh my God, Y2K is an actual thing and it's taking over and it's starting to kill everybody. And it goes from, all these people are having fun partying to, oh my God, it's the end of the world. Everybody's dead and dying. And that, first of all, whiplash, that happened so immediately, so quickly that it was kind of like, okay, well, wow, we're immediately off the rails. That's interesting. That was fast. But what's it called? The whole point of this movie, they have to get to somewhere on the edge of town where there's not a lot of technology and they'll be safe for the night. And whenever they get to that point, they get tracked down by a computer and they realize, oh my God, wait, not all the computers are necessarily enemies. Let's have a conversation with this computer. The computer just exposition dumps, hey, all you need to do is go to the school that they attend, and plug a USB thing into this drive, and then everything's going to be fine and you're going to save humanity. And they do that. And it's interesting, but at the same time, it's the most basic, straightforward plot ever. It's just a lot of like people walking around and walking around and walking around and walking around. And there's a lot of comedy and stuff mixed in. There's a couple of conversations that I feel like could have been a lot more interesting if they actually dove into them and they actually like explored the characters more. But overall, very entry-level movie. I think that the comedic elements, like I said, are fantastic. I think that if you're a fan of coming-of-age stories, there's definitely a lot to like. If you've seen the movie DD that came out this year, very similar to that movie, surprisingly. But overall, I enjoyed it. I do think that this movie could have been better if they had more horror elements in it. And like I said, this movie kind of felt like a spoof of an actual movie. I would love to see somebody do the opposite of like the spoof movies and instead make like an actual serious movie that follows the same premise and a similar kind of group of characters where the end of the world happens, and instead of them like, kind of like goofing around and making a bunch of jokes and stuff like that, they take things a little bit more serious. The computer enemy actually feels more like a threat, and I feel like it could just be a lot more interesting. But that being said, overall, I still really enjoyed it. I'm going to give this movie a solid like 76 out of 100. I liked it. I liked the stuff they were doing with it. The music, the nostalgia, the comedy kind of completely took away from the plot and the actual story and character development in here. But that being said, that was it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. I love and appreciate you guys so much for watching. And if you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe. And I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace out.